Hello, people of the internet. My name is Atlas, and today I'm back with another Deltarune discussion video. Today, I'll be discussing the mystery of the location of the Chapter 4 Dark World. This video is going to be less of a theory where I come to a concrete answer, and more so a way of laying out all the evidence I could find for each candidate so you can come to your own conclusions. I'll give my personal best guess at the end, but I'm honestly not super sure of myself on this one, so take it with a grain of salt. And hey, if you like the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment giving your thoughts on it. I'm interested in hearing what you have to say. To begin, it only feels right to start with what has definitely been the most popular answer since Chapter 2's release, the church. The origin of this prediction seems to stem from Rudy's dialogue in Hometown, where he says he might be able to go to church tomorrow, revealing not only will there be a service there, but that we have at least one very important character that will be there, Noelle, and maybe more depending on if Rudy will actually be able to go, and if the mayor is willing to step away from her work. Alvin also has some pretty mysterious dialogue, which while not directly hinting at a church dark world, does put a bit of focus on the building given he runs it. There's also some of the sneak peeks we've seen from this chapter, which include Susie getting a drink from a punch bowl, Caddy drinking something, and Cupwalka, which some people have connected to the mention of the church's sick fruit juice. There are also these little annoying dogs dressed up as devils, which we've gotten recently, though we don't actually know if they'll appear in-game. When it comes to potential themes of this dark world, there are a few to choose from, though generally the most common ideas nowadays would be religion, music, and literature, particularly focused on fantasy. The latter two could line up with Cupwalker's appearance, which seems to be similar to a marching band member or a soldier. There's also the translation dialogue we got, one of which is a Shakespeare reference which could fit for a literature dark world, and another that mentions an inferno, which could fit with religious imagery, or be a literary reference to Dante's Inferno. Though Hometown's religion doesn't have sin, so I don't know how hell or an inferno would work. There's also the fact that there's a holy element mentioned with a sky mantle, an unused item, that would make the most sense to appear in the church. It's also worth mentioning that, at least so far, every Dark World has had some kind of connection to Gerson. Chapter 1 being his old classroom, Chapter 2 being at the library with his books, and Chapter 3 featuring the history of humans and monsters. This is something we only know the church has for certain. And that's most of the evidence I could find on the church. It's easy to see why someone would think this is it, but let's go ahead and take a look at another candidate, shall we? While the church has generally been the most popular candidate, there have been moments where the tide has shifted, and at one point the tide shifted, at least a little, in the favor of Flower King. And this makes sense. The Flower King is one of the most popular general Dark World locations for obvious reasons. The unnerving flowers in the back and the fact that Asgore lives there, but there is more to it than that. For one, in the Spring 2024 newsletter, the first one that spoke mainly about Chapter 4, we were given tons of Asgore-related sprites, including the aforementioned flowers, when we hadn't received any before, and have yet to got any more since. Given Chapter 3 is likely to focus on Toriel, it makes sense that there be a chapter focused on Asgore as well, and that it could be the very next one. This can be added to considering Undyne is likely our secondary Lightner of Chapter 3, which would set up Alphys to join in Asgore's chapter. This also leads into the potential theme of the chapter, comic books and manga. Toby considers both of these comics. Asgore has a strange amount of connections to these, to the point where it hardly seems coincidental. He has comics from Alphys on his TV, compares Santa, who he aspires to be like, to a superhero, and Alphys makes multiple references to showing him manga and anime, even in Undertale. And I'm sure you already know Alphys is the same. There are also some newsletter sprites that seem like they could fit here, including a Sakura tree, which actually got updated between newsletters, and these golden flowers above this text, which also seems to work with Flower King. This is also related to a tree adventure Toby mentioned, where there were apparently a bunch of trees in one room, which once again seems to fit Flower King the best. In a screenshot from Chapter 4, Susie also says that Chris's family is weird, which would be strange if she's only interacted with Toriel. Going back to that translation, the mention of an inferno could fit given Asgore has fire magic. Finally, and I'd personally say most compellingly, in Chapter 2, Flower King is closed and got an additional door around the back, which is specifically pointed out to us by an NPC, who also mentions it's unlocked. This entire scenario feels very similar to the door change to the computer lab for Chapter 2 once it became a Dark World. This brings us to our final and most recently popular candidate, the Holiday Mansion. This largely comes from the most recent screenshots we've received from the recent newsletters, all of which are clearly holiday themed. We know where some of these are from. The tiny Christmas tree seems to belong in Chris's room, while the wreath is definitely meant to be on the outside of a town hall. However, this room Noelle is in and the giant Christmas tree used to open up the Chapter 4 section of the newsletter don't seem to belong anywhere we have seen so far, and just generally seem to be obvious picks for the Holiday household. The bits of localization we've received also add on to this, as presents are mentioned in the Dark World at some point by Susie and Lancer, and the mention of an inferno could make sense given coal and fireplaces are both part of Christmas tradition and seem like things that could appear in the Holiday house. It is also home to two very important characters in Noelle and Mayor Holiday, which certainly makes it relevant enough to visit. As for themes, video games is the most likely candidate given Noelle's heavy association with them, including the fact that her freezing darkness from there would maintain its double meaning, and their relevance in the Spamford sweepstakes, which could be hinting at what we may see if this is the case. However, I will say, while this felt fairly concrete for a while, given Toby has mentioned there will be a very long stretch of time spent in the Light World in Chapter 4, it's not impossible that these Holiday Manor related images are from that section of the game as opposed to the Dark World. And so, we've reached the end. What do I think? Well, I was a strong Flower King believer for a very long time, but as we've seen more and more, I've gotten less and less confident. Though I think I currently lean towards the Holiday Manor. I don't know, maybe this is just Toby pulling what he did before Chapter 2, where he tried to make it seem like it was going to be the hospital, but I definitely think it has the strongest evidence. I do still think the church is possible though, and even if it's not Chapter 4, Flower King feels pretty much guaranteed. I'd say it's probably going to be Chapter 5 if you ask me. Either way, I hope this helped you understand things a bit more, and I look forward to hear what you all think in the comments. I also want to thank you all for the support I received on my last video. While I realize I'm speaking to two different fan bases here, I imagine there's some overlap, and I appreciate either way. This video ended up being shorter than I imagined, but hey, that's okay. Not every video needs to be super long. I do plan on making some longer videos soon, at least compared to this one. When it comes to Deltarune content, I'd like to make a video going over the narrative potential of each popular knight candidate, as I think it's an interesting angle to look at things from that doesn't get explored too often. I'll also be making a general prediction video for Project Eden's Garden, where I talk about potential ways the story could go and how likely each character is to fill each role. And eventually, I want to dig into the imitation and echo art, but as that could take some pretty heavy analysis, and could end up being rather long, I can't say for sure when you could expect that. And as my channel is growing, 500 subscribers is seemingly more and more possible, so when that happens, I'll do a Q&A video, and answer any questions you may have. Assuming enough are asked, of course. If you enjoyed, like, subscribe, drink water, remember to floss, and don't forget, the impossible is possible. All you gotta do is make it so. Good night.